I want us to become brothers again like we used to be, and for us to find ourselves and bond with each other. Can we agree to that?
Opinions vary.
Welcome to Three Brothers Filmcast. I'm Anton Bergstrom, and I'm here with my brothers,
Anders and Aaron.
My last name is the same as my brother's.
And for this month's Roundtable, we're discussing M. Night Shyamalan's latest supernatural thriller, Knock at the Cabin. If you have yet to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, please consider doing so. It only takes you a few seconds to rate us, but it really does help us to reach more and more listeners. But now, on to the show.
Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Hi there. Can I talk to you for a little bit?
You have to come inside right now. There were 4 of them.
What did we say? You shouldn't make things up when we're talking about...
Can you open the door, please?
They're breaking in! I got you, baby.
We're not here to hurt you, but you have to stay here in the cabin with us. Families throughout history have been chosen to make this decision. Your family must choose to willingly sacrifice one of the 3 of you to prevent the apocalypse.
We're not sacrificing anyone.
For every no you give us, hundreds of thousands of people are going to die.
It's really happening.
Sweetheart, close your eyes.
Will you make a choice?
This past August, we asked whether Jordan Peele is the new M. Night Shyamalan, as we analyzed Peele's sci-fi thriller Nope in comparison to Shyamalan's Signs, which was celebrating its 20th anniversary this past summer. I had asked Anders and Aaron whether the provocation, or what could even be described as the silliness of the ending of Signs, was in fact part of the point. Shyamalan doesn't want to make it easy to buy that film's miracle. If it were too easy, it would go against the film's underpinning themes. I can't help but think that Shyamalan's latest film, Knock at the Cabin, is doing something similar, by inviting the audience to question the plausibility of its scenario. Jonathan Groff's Eric, his partner Andrew, played by Ben Eldridge, and their young adopted daughter Wen, played by Kristen Cui, are enjoying a vacation at a remote cabin in the woods. As the film begins, Wen is outside alone catching grasshoppers, when a big man, played by Dave Bautista, appears from behind a tree and begins talking to her. Leonard, as Bautista's character introduces himself, and his 3 companions, there's Rupert Grint's Redmond, Nikki Amuka Bird's Sabrina, and Abby Quinn's Adrian, detain the family occupying the cabin and explain to them that they face a dire choice. They must choose to sacrifice a member of their family or a calamity, global in scale and catastrophic in destruction, will be released on humanity. They have 4 chances to make the choice, 1 chance for each of the 4 kidnapper prophets, after which point humanity's existence on Earth will end. So the family must weigh their sacrifice against the end of the world. I was struck by how Shyamalan doesn't approach this contrived supernatural scenario as an exercise in suspending the audience's belief. Rather, he actually invites the audience to test their belief in the scenario. Jonathan Groff's Eric is more believing, for instance, while Andrew is much more skeptical. Like many Shyamalan movies, the characters take on certain types and perform roles in the film's philosophical dialogue. Although Knock at the Door is based on the 2018 novel The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, the story fits in well with Shyamalan's film project of creating moral and existential fables in the mode of cinematic thrillers and episodes of The Twilight Zone. Most of Shyamalan's films are essentially what-if stories. I like Knock at the Cabin, but it's not among Shyamalan's best. Nonetheless, I'm left thinking that Shyamalan is one of the gutsiest filmmakers out there. Some have said Shyamalan just has too much ego for only a handful of filmmaking tricks, perhaps best exemplified by his ego-driven split from Disney Touchstone to make his modern fairy tale, Lady in the Water. Few filmmakers working in mainstream American movies seem as willing to pursue an out-there idea to its fullness and final conclusion, or to restrain their formal approach to such a prolonged degree. Of course, on both points, we could easily point to a more daring idea and a more formalist technique, but who's doing both as consistently as part of their whole filmmaking program, while at the same time trying to reach mainstream audiences? So Brothers, do you agree about Shyamalan's guts as a filmmaker? Anders, do you think that's the case? Or on the other hand, is he sort of growing stale and boring in terms of his formal and thematic tendencies?
I am of the opinion that Shyamalan is a little bit stale and boring. Not too much.
You
though.
can
I wanna,
say it. You can say it if you think.
Yeah. No, but I am a little bit reticent to I think that can be a very glib or dismissive take on him. I remember as early as like the early 2000s that it was to the point, like the whole idea of that him being a twist filmmaker became a real thing.
Yeah.
Right. And to the point that I remember that on that old Robot Chicken show, there was like a whole skit once about M. Night Shyamalan. Ooh, what a twist. Very, very silly, really annoying. And it annoyed me because I thought that it undersold what Shyamalan is capable of as a filmmaker. And I do think he is. That said, I actually perhaps well, it's hard for me to say, really, because I haven't, after Lady in the Water, I didn't really keep up with a lot of his films. I did watch the Unbreakable sequels and spin-offs, Split and Glass. But I never saw Old, never saw The Visit, never saw The Happening or any of his other just sort of the Will Smith one or the Last Airbender movie.
So you're leaning towards him being more tired and kind of boring.
Yeah, but I can't really say like there seems to be a real formal consistency to those first few breakthrough films, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable. And I think Knock at the Cabin fits more into that.
Okay.
So there's something, I don't know. And I know it's a little bit of a smaller film in some ways, and maybe it's not so much that, like, I think you have some good points about his daring, his formal approach and things like that in some ways. But I also, for me, I'm not sure the film, like, there are moments where it kind of started to lose me a little bit in terms of like whether I was kind of just like, just hurry up, get to it.
But so in a quick take, like, did you like the movie or not? And then do you think it exemplifies Shyamalan's better tendencies or his worst tendencies? And I'll put that to Aaron right after that.
I give the film, I think I'm moderately like it. Like, I don't think it's a bad film. I think the people who like are dismissive of it, I don't get that. I think that its critical reception is fairly appropriate, but I don't think it's among his very best.
Yeah. Aaron, what do you think? I think you saw more like a couple weeks ago, right?
I saw it opening night.
Oh, there you go.
Partially just on a whim because I wanted to go see a movie and it was out that day. I was like, okay, cool. I like Shyamalan in this new phase of his where he seems to be the kind of genre expert. He's really settled into that Twilight Zone aspect, which is always there, but there's no longer a prestige sheen on it, right? Like kind of a veneer of respectability. Yeah. And I actually think that has allowed him to pursue some of his interests with a lot more abandon and without the pretensions that you get in something like Lady in the Water.
Can I ask a question there really quick, Aaron? That would you count The Visit Old in this, or would you also count Split in that as well?
I'd count Split in that. They're all. Yeah. I mean, he literally was working with Blumhouse for a while with those movies, with Split, with Glass.
Was Split in the sort of the fake out that it's actually an Unbreakable movie?
Yeah, exactly. But it fits within that Blumhouse idea, and you mentioned it, Anton, of his coming on. He makes movies under budget, and he makes movies that are like smaller in scale now. But that almost seems to feed into his interest because his movies often have those kind of potboiler element of like, the second half of Signs, it's just you're trapped on the farm and you're not leaving it. And it's just that kind of do or die scenario allows him to really put the screws to the characters and see what they're made of. And then by extension, what the audience is made of. And so with Knock at the Cabin, I enjoy it as basically a like more B-movie version of Signs. I actually think it's quite good. I think it's one of my first thought coming out of it beyond my kind of chuckling over how the ending really fits Shyamalan. Like it's such a distillation of him in the sense that this movie is maybe the Signs to his like late phase B movies that Signs is to his early prestige films. It's the one that kind of coalesces so much of his thematic obsessions and really, really hits you with it to the point where some people are going to be like, man, this is just so dumb. Why are you so on this a faith thing? And it's like, no, that's the whole point of watching movies in his mind. But aside from that, coming over, the other thing I noticed was like, oh man, how refreshing is it to watch a movie that's like 100 minutes and that all the shots are like really considered and really strongly like there's strong visual choices. It's not doing anything that it shouldn't be doing in the visual setups. It's got some interesting ways to frame scenes, but it's not like overly fussy about it. It keeps the plot moving despite the fact that it's a stuck scenario, and it's just like the editing rhythms, the way that all the actors are quite good. Like it's just every element in terms of form is doing what Shyamalan wants it to do, which is in service to the story. And it's the make or break is dependent on the story, not on the presentation of it. Yeah. And I think that's something that's not said enough nowadays, where so many movies do break down on a formal level. But Shyamalan, it's like, no, the guy's just stylistically knows exactly what he's doing. He's better than most directors in that respect.
I do think your characterization of this as like a B movie is like really apt, and we're not like using that as necessarily like a pejorative. It's just more of like, right, like the ambitions of the film are lesser. You're right, like he's not trying for prestige. He also doesn't have a budget for prestige, but some of the features you're describing as being sort of enjoyable, or what we actually would associate with those really good B movies of the past, where we've drawn out, where you notice we'd start to notice like, oh, like this was an old sci-fi movie, an old detective type movie, but the formally, the cinematography, the camera setup, all of this is very good, and it's doing everything it can do within its sort of potential, like really well. So like I appreciate, even if it's he sort of has to work at this sort of level now. Like I don't know if he could get the budget to do, I don't know, like 150, maybe not. But I appreciate that he's sort of consistently turning out these types of movies now. Sorry, Anders, I think I cut into you, but like, what do you think? Like, do you sort of see this as a B movie? Is that a bad thing, a good thing?
That's actually a helpful framing. And I think what you note, the strengths of this movie are its formal elements, the editing, the acting, the way it tells its story is actually pretty good. And when I say that maybe the film loses me a little bit, I don't think that that's because of the pacing or anything like that. I think, in fact, I don't even think the script. I think the script is pretty decent.
So is it the whole premise?
I think it's the premise and the story. I think it's a really difficult one. And I don't know if we're ready to get into all that yet. But I think that, like, for me, the premise of the movie, I was very curious going into it, because I was like, how are you going to, like, if someone came to you, like, what reason? And these are the neat thing about having this conversation is essentially what the film puts the characters through these same questions, right? Like, what reason would you have to believe a person, right? Like, there's no reason you should. And
testimony, right?
Right. It relies on personal testimony. And anyway, I don't know. We can get into the ending of the film a little bit later, because I think that the question is a very interesting one, because my position is that Andrew in the film is correct in being like, these people are insane. Why should we believe anything you have to say?
Okay.
Because they've provided no evidence at all.
So for you, you're like, correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is you're saying that you are not fully on board for the premise and its execution because you aren't persuaded, and you don't necessarily believe that someone would be persuaded given the evidence.
Exactly.
This is the end of the world, that they have to make this choice to sacrifice someone or all hell will break loose.
Right. Now, the way the film goes about trying to solve, not like a solution to a mystery, but solve the filmmaking trick of how do you make this more believable. Funny enough, again, to go back to Signs, uses one of the same tricks that Signs does, which is that you never see the global catastrophe and things very much
firsthand.
It's all through television, right? And those kind of things. And it raises an interesting meta question. Is like, how do we believe? Why do we take for granted the reality that we are fed through media? We have to, and we must, because we cannot be everywhere at all times, right? And so it really comes down to these interesting questions of trust. So I think there's a kernel of a philosophical idea in there, but I'm pretty convinced that without having read the novel, that probably most of these same issues exist in the novel.
Okay. Have you guys read what the ending of the novel is?
No.
No.
Do you want me to spoil it for you? Because it's very different.
I'm never going to read it.
I'm not going to go read the novel.
So I'm kind of curious because I like when I dig into a movie and I find out that it's got a novel. I'm like, oh, okay, and it's the genre novel. I'm always down for reading more horror. Once I explain this to you, you'll totally understand why Shyamalan was drawn to it and why he changed it. So in the novel, it's the exact same setup and everything, except for what happens around halfway point through the novel is that Andrew has a fight with Leonard after he gets the gun, and he accidentally shoots Wen and kills Wen. And Wen is now dead. And Andrew and Eric essentially decide that they do not care. They will not live in a universe in which God would want their daughter dead or them to do this kind of decision. And they decide, screw you to everybody and allow the apocalypse to happen. That's the novel ending.
That's very different.
Yeah, but
he takes the premise,
specifically
but goes
the
in a
book
different
is
direction.
the book is is kind of like an atheist screed against if God exists, I hate him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Shyamalan makes it about
the Dostoevsky.
What does it mean to do the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
because interestingly,
belief requires you to care about others more than you, and he pushes that, right?
I was curious whether they would go the route of having one of the family members accidentally kill, and then that doesn't count because it has to be chosen, right? It has to be this, for it to be an authentic sacrifice. It can't be something you accidentally, like, nobody can say it's like, well, you sacrificed that $20 to that, say a homeless person, when it just fell out of your pocket and they found it. That's not a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
But don't you think it's kind of interesting, right? Like
that's
the novel is
interesting.
But you can understand why he's drawn to it, because it's this question of what do you believe, what evidence will turn you. It's this kind of enormous moral hinge question that ties up with these genre interests, these supernatural interests. But there's, of course, no way that Shyamalan would ever go for that ending. And it's not just a commercial instinct Hollywood thing. It's the fact that, like, it would be anathema to his whole approach to characters learning.
Well, I mean, that's why he's drawn to this. It's the for your consideration, a cabin in the woods, a family is confronted by 4 people. He's drawn to it for its Twilight Zone potential. Like this is it's a compelling scenario, right?
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
I was reminded of something like another film based on a lesser Twilight Zone premise, like The Box. You hit this button somewhere, someone's going to die, right? Like,
although that one's
it's
a Kubrick Twilight Zone.
I can accept that within a sort of Twilight Zone sort of.
So why weren't you convinced? I guess,
it's not convinced. It's like the film, as Shyamalan has now resolves when Eric decides he believes them, but he believes them not only because of the persuasiveness of Leonard and the others and what's going on, but because he himself experiences a revelation, because he sees something in the mirror.
Perhaps
he sees a revelation to him. And I'm like, so then there is no actual solution. The solution is you have to experience it. You have to have a revelation of your own in order to, because otherwise you would never do that. Like if once you became convinced, right? Like that. So it's
true.
It's not as interesting as science to me.
But
like science is more.
No, don't you like? I agree with you in the sense of it makes it somewhat of a frustrating narrative solution, because there's an impossible the mathematical solution of the narrative cannot solve itself without a variable entering halfway through,
right,
that you have no control over. So it's not
which
rational.
is like which I think works. I like that's okay, but then why this whole premise is kind of sadistic.
But it is kind of sadistic, and that's one of the funny things with Shyamalan. I think we should dig into that, but I just think it's so funny because this is why I think certain critics I've noticed and certain people have tended to not like this movie, of the minority that dislikes it, because most people like it.
I don't dislike it, just to be
clear. No, I'm not saying you, but the people, lots of them gravitate towards the novel because the novel is more of that like humanist anti-transcendent
message.
Worse
to me though.
No, but it's the whole element of the ecstatic vision that Eric has, which might be explained away through his head injury, and we don't actually get an answer for it, is kind of, this is what I'm talking about, where like Shyamalan is tapping into something so brilliantly encapsulation of faith, because he has identified that there is a layer. There is a layer that a person cannot ever cross through rational thinking alone. There's no way that will ever make you be a person who says, you're not going to believe in God or believe in the supernatural based off reason. No. There always has to be
it's science.
Something.
You have to tell what kind of person are you?
See, what you have to ask yourself is, what kind of person are you? Are you the kind that sees signs, sees miracles? Or do you believe that people just get lucky? Or look at the question this way. Is it possible that there are no coincidences?
But but that's the thing. You have to see it. It's not just the testimony. The testimony can lead you to look for it, but you have to see it for yourself. And I think it's funny that a B movie like this is Shyamalan somehow getting out this actually very elegant way of showing how faith works. It's a very convoluted concept, but it's actually like extremely profoundly true, that essential challenge.
So Aaron, I think you make a good point that you could, on a sort of materialistic, I mean, so it's a supernatural, it's obviously a supernatural premise, but but you could explain, in a more skeptical way, Eric's seeing something as the condition of his head injury, and even Andrew mentions that, right? Like he's like, you're not concussed. Seeing properly, you're concussed. But I think that, I mean, partly why I wanted to set up that comparison with Signs, because I do think they are entertaining similar questions, and I think that central conversation between Meryl and Mel Gibson's character, Graham, about what kind of a person are you, and do you see miracles or do you just see coincidences? I think that's key, because I also think, as Shyamalan, someone who loves to parcel out background information in small little packages that sort of try to explain a lot in those very sort of precise flashbacks. We get a few of those of the couple, and within those, I think we're already, and I think this is a testament to his ability sort of to build character through that restrained form. We already know why Eric would be the one who would have that, would see, or would make the choice, and why not Andrew?
Because he had faith in that they could make it as,
in faith in humanity, like Andrew essentially doesn't have faith in humanity.
No,
and again, he explains it in a way that it's also not. What's interesting about this one is also, it's not just about your what kind of a person you are as a personality type. It's also like their experience that they've had. Like Andrew has gone through certain things that make him not have a lot of faith in humanity, because of, he's essentially had so many injustices against him, as a gay man, things like that, the attack in the bar, things like that.
Which might be Raymond.
Which might know. Yeah, well, it seems to be the one.
Yeah, because he says O'Connor.
What I'm intrigued by, though, is that you get this weird, and I guess I don't know if it's a weakness of the film or not, and maybe this leans towards Andrew's camp, but I don't know because he does want to Shyamalan does want to build in a fair number of reasons to distrust, and one of the most prominent ones is the fact that Rupert Grint's character seems to have been the person who attacked Andrew in a bar because he was gay, and then all of a sudden, he's the one who started the online forum to bring the people together. And we're parceled out again. We don't get any flashbacks of those characters. We only get flashbacks of the couple and their experience with picking out Wen at the orphanage and stuff. But so we don't get any background information on them. We're only told it. But within that, there's enough sort of red flags raised, and it's weird because you're like, so even. I think we're left with the ending to conclude that this was sort of an end of the world scenario, but these people are maybe lunatics too.
And it's never actually, it's one of those things, right, of where it's the, if you're looking at it through clear eyes, like they are lunatics, because only a lunatic would do this, but they might also be right. And
yeah,
the apocalypse,
they're lunatics and they might be right. That's the thing. Yeah.
Because it's, a lot of people, the message might be correct and they wouldn't do it, because only a person who has faith that would lead you beyond the rational would you actually do any of those actions. Why would you want to get chopped up by some makeshift axe thing? Like, it's horrifying. So just on that ending point, like, I think the movie kind of gestures that it's probably the apocalypse and it's, the resolution that they've saved the world, but that the presence of the song in the car, that when he turns it on, it's the song that's playing earlier when it's the Happy Days, and now
they're happy.
I forget the name of it. Yeah, but that song coming back, and Andrew turns it on and then he turns it off, and then Wen turns it on again, and it's this really weirdly ambiguous moment where you don't know, is this like this song will now haunt you and remind you, did you make the right choice for the rest of your life?
But she also makes it so that he has to choose. So it turns on the radio. It's by coincidence or whatever. It's the family's happy song. It's aligned with a previous flashback that the audience gets. So we ourselves sort of experience it as sort of a happy memory. He turns it off. She turns it back on, and then this was the weird thing. She turns it back on, listens to it, then turns it off, looks over at her dad. And he has to choose to turn it back on if he wants to listen. So she doesn't say, I'm going to make you listen to this again. And that to me, again, is this is a movie that like emphasizes like sort of the choice. And that's partly why I sort of described it as an existentialist fable. Like it requires the choice on all these different fronts. And I even think that that's one of the reasons why he had the family be like, it's a gay couple and their adopted child, because it builds in choice. Like there's earlier flashback scenes where they're like, we're choosing to pick out this child. This wasn't something that came through coincidence, and it's not family born of circumstance, right? You're just sort of born and this is your family. No, everything has been selected and chosen. And that like on all levels in this storytelling, it's like, the characters are forced to sort of make a choice, and then sort of that's how they pursue it through.
Yeah, I actually, that's a great point. I really like that you point out that it is, it serves this like really good thematic and narrative purpose in the film, and it makes them, it makes their choice even more tragic in some ways too. It adds a layer of like,
yeah, and there's sort of that like, because they're always affirming their choice. They have that like line between them, which is like, it's like us together always or something. Yeah. But they'll reinforce the choice through sort of the couple's like sort of
that we're bonded together. Yeah. So I think that's very interesting. You're making me like a lot of aspects of the movie a lot more, making me second. Like I still, like because I like it, but you're nudging me a little bit up. But I just wanted to say the one thing that kind of like it's kind of the same thing as Signs. And I was thinking back about my review of Signs from last year, and where I point out like the reason Signs works for me is because the suspense and emotion works. Like the scene when Graham confronts his dying wife in the flashback, that scene makes or breaks the movie for you. Like really, without that scene, the rest of the movie would be like, come on, there's aliens invading and they're going to beat them with water and all, you're laughing. And like the other thing, this film, I think I would have almost liked to see a version of this basically exactly the same, but that the way the integration of the plagues and disasters in a little bit differently. I think there's a little bit of haphazardness, but one thing I did like about the integration of those is that they never confirm. Those things can never confirm for them if it's real, right? Because like obviously the tsunami and earthquake.
Do you mean like the TV clips that they turn on?
The three like tragic like sort of events that start happening, like the plagues, the end times sort of signs.
Yeah. The tsunami, the virus, and the airplane plane crashes. Yeah,
those like,
all of them could have
all of them could be coincidences potentially. Yes,
natural or human agency scenario.
I think at the very end, the lightning is a little more obvious, but at that point, it's already kind of the game is given away. But for like, I kind of like that thematically, but it's dramatically that it doesn't. Like this is a film that works really well talking with you guys about it, unpacking. I think some of the acting and the choices are solid. I'm not sure that it worked really well for me as like a suspenseful or scary movie. I wasn't really ever like scared of what was happening, even like the suspenseful scenes like in the bathroom, like with
Did you like this? Did you like the bathroom scene? Like I thought that was
it's
well
fine.
done.
It's well done, but like it just I wasn't really like I kind of expected that, I guess.
Sorry, can I just pose a question here? And is the reason perhaps why it's a little less than satisfying for you compared to Signs is that the character whose enormous emotional journey and actual emotional underpinning of the story has already made the decision prior to us meeting him?
Yeah, Leonard.
It's Dave Bautista's Leonard.
Yeah.
He's the main character. But we meet him after the momentous decision. So he's not a Graham Hess who has to come to that realization on screen. He's already had it.
No, Eric is like Jonathan
exactly.
Groff is like,
no, Andrew's the
he's
central character.
Yes.
Andrew's the central character of the family because he's the most assertive. And he's the one who has the most baggage.
And he lives. So he gets the ending too.
But Leonard is Leonard is the guy who drives this. He's clearly the leader of the four. He's the last of them. You know, we haven't mentioned yet, they're the four horsemen of the apocalypse. They all fit that. They all
if reading online is a suggestion, he's also seems to be the emotional anchor for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of that was Bautista's like performance. Like that incongruity of like a soft-spoken, gentle man in this huge, imposing, scary body is very good. And like, you know, at first it seems kind of creepy the way he's almost talking with Wen and stuff. And then you're like, oh, he's a grade 2 teacher. It makes sense.
He knows
He's
how to
used
do
talking
this.
with kids.
Yeah.
When he comments on the appropriateness of the cartoon, it seems like a good cartoon. It's like
I kind of loved like Bautista in this, and I don't want to be like hyperbolic online personally. I know he's a good actor. I don't know why people don't, you know, maybe it's because Marvel is like in such for like film Twitter people. Marvel is just,
he's like the best character in Guardians.
Drax
right?
Drax is hilarious. Like he's one of the funniest parts of all the Marvel movies.
He still makes me laugh when I watch when the kids.
But then you know you see Blade Runner 2049. You see these other roles, even Army of the Dead, which I know you didn't really like, but like he's good in it.
Yeah.
No, he even tries. Yeah, he tries to.
He makes me wish the movie was better so that it would like have made his performance more valuable.
This is the first time where I think he's got a dramatic role and a part that is actually big enough where I'm like, oh, I'm glad that he gets roles like this because he's very good in it.
Stay back!
I believe you were chosen because your family's love for each other is so pure. I know you've been through a lot and people haven't been fair to you.
Drop the weapon and move away from Eric, or I'll show you I was chosen to put a bullet in your head. Drop it now, Leonard, or I'll kill you.
You're dooming us all, Andrew. You're dooming your husband. You're dooming your daughter.
I'm done with you! I'm not listening to another goddamn word you say!
It's time for the next sacrifice. Are you willing to make a choice?
But it's interesting with him as your central character because, like, you were mentioning formal choices, Anton, and how Shyamalan chooses to shoot Bautista in this cramped space is actually evidence of just how formally intricate he is. The use of his head is the thing to like block Eric and Andrew in the cross-cutting. His kind of hulking body is this forever foreground object. It just speaks to how Shyamalan never does anything like boring. He's this is one of those Spielberg or Hitchcock comparisons, not thematically or anything, but just pure formally, is that Shyamalan will always come up with the most interesting way to shoot the most basic action.
Yeah.
In a way that other directors will be like, oh, we'll just do a 2-shot. It's fine. And he'll be like, no. If you do this and this, he
refuses to ever just do a basic shot. And he's someone who storyboards. Yeah. So actually, I mean, again, that's linking back to Spielberg too and Hitchcock. But I actually think that you can tell when, again, this sounds weird, but you're like, there's something about when you know a director heavily storyboards, what it does is it seems to align the storytelling with the actual camera work in a way that isn't always achieved when it's not. Something with the forethought like brings those two things together in a way that sometimes other films you're like, it's not that the cinematography is bad or hindering, but you're like, you see, like I just feel like with a Shyamalan movie with Spielberg, you know, even like The Fabelmans, which I watched recently, you're just like the full alignment between camera and story is intense in everything.
It's writing and light.
You mentioned this, and I, we had a whole episode on The Fabelmans, me and Anders, but I just have to mention, like, you say that about Spielberg can't ever, everything has to be formally everything. And the scene where she gives him the camera, that's like 10 minutes into the movie, and where the shot is like pulls back door, follows her, comes down, and like moves as she kneels down, the camera follows her down and moves back. So you get this perfect shot where the light is coming through the window and backlighting her. And here's your camera. We're going to make a film with Daddy's camera. Like that's the kind of decision where Spielberg does that in one shot.
Yeah, he probably like just like tosses it off.
I think you're right, though. It's like this alignment of the tools of cinematic storytelling with a story and script in a way. If you're not storyboarding it, I think a lot of the directors who are good at that also are people who like shoot a lot of footage.
Yeah, and they'll discover it
like
through
a Fincher
editing.
or
you'll discover
like
the montage.
They'll discover
that happens.
As Fincher has always said, there's 100,000 different ways to take a shot, and there's only one right one. Right?
Or alternatively, somebody who's shot a billion things and is such a pro at it, they don't need the extra time. A Clint Eastwood, or like Johnny To, who's famously does not storyboard his action scenes or anything. He'll just go into the scenario of that day where they can film, and he's like, okay, we're doing this, because he's made 50 movies and 50 TV shows.
Or the Clint Eastwood, like, just get it done. We gotta get one take.
I don't want to do a lot of takes. They're just gonna have the baby's just gonna be a doll. You're American.
Cronenberg's like that too, though. He only does one take if nothing screws up.
This is you trust your way of telling it. You trust your knowledge and things like that. But also these are often people who are not indebted though to certain the really basic forms of coverage and stuff like that. As you say, they're people who care about their camera, and I do think Shyamalan's one of those guys who,
This might be a weird comparison, but Aaron, the way you're describing the way Shyamalan shoots Batista, and like so he seems so huge within the film, right? And you're right that he's everywhere within the cabin space when they've taken it over, and like the amount of close-ups that Shyamalan chooses to shoot. And there's to the point, I mean, I'm not even sure the precise term, but you're like, it's so close on the face that we're not even seeing the full face all out of the time. And,
extreme close up.
Yeah, and it's like, but I was thinking of actually, what do you call it? The Green Mile, in the way that
John Coffey or whatever?
Yeah, yes,
Michael Clark.
The way he's shot, and he just seems like insanely massive, huge, special. Like the way that shoots him, and there's something with that, like they're both kind of like, for better or worse, the term, like like sort of gentle giant type characters. Yeah. But they're also both these films are actually trying to tap into a mystical aspect, right, with the characters. But you don't feel like Leonard is disturbed the way that perhaps all three of the other kidnappers are. He seems the one who's most consciously made a choice, and it isn't sort of just being sucked up with something. And I don't know what to make of that.
You just spurred a thought in my mind that I actually had run through my mind earlier today, that a film that in some weird ways utilizes a very limited location and both basically the end of the world and things. It was also directed by Frank Darabont, who did The Green Mile, is The Mist, his adaptation of the Stephen King film, which I actually really like. But although it's definitely more of the fits more the nihilistic ending of the novel.
Yeah,
here,
it is interesting,
which
like,
is apparently not in the King book.
There's so many cottage. Your cottage or your cabin in the woods. Right?
Yeah, but I think I actually would love to see Shyamalan do a Stephen King adaptation.
That could be really interesting.
So I don't want to derail, but going back to our discussion of Signs last August and our comparisons with Jordan Peele, and my endless trolling of people about Jordan Peele's the new Shyamalan, which like there's just more and more evidence every day. It's true.
This movie is more evidence.
It's a good. See, exactly. That's the thing. It's like people realize it's like this is a compliment. This is it. No, but the movie, the most recent movie that Knock at the Cabin reminded me most of is Us.
Oh yeah. With the 4 home invaders. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The 4 home invaders, which has end of the world scenario. This idea of backstory, which is hidden from us and parceled out periodically, this ending that resolves but not entirely, and the notion of like what is like, I don't know. It's no, but the thing is that one is so indicative of the way Peele approaches,
Yes.
one's so indicative of the way Shyamalan approaches, because Peele's thing like moves out and out and out to the point where I don't understand what the metaphor is actually like conveying. By the time we get the Hands Across America thing, I don't actually know what he's saying anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't get it. While Shyamalan goes in and in and in to the point where he gets so like pushed down onto the personal level that it's almost like, is this now impenetrable to anybody who is not in perfect alignment with this character?
But that's sort of, to me, like, is like, so I guess actually that's interesting. So like one of the differences might be that at the end of the day, like Peele is interested in the social level in a way that Shyamalan's not.
Mm-hmm.
Shyamalan's interested in the personal level. So his story doesn't open up that same way. And even, you know, sort of a very claustrophobic type movie like Get Out is still operating in
the social,
addressing
allegory.
The social level, right? And even Shyamalan's most social allegories, like The Village, are a confined society, not society at large, but a society people have chosen to embed, a specific community, right? So his movies are always, in some sense, all of it take signs about aliens coming to Earth, and he's interested in one family's dealing with this on one farm in rural Pennsylvania. Here again, it's the end of the world, and we get a family, we get 4 people. Another interesting difference would be, so if you compare it to us, Jordan Peele's interested in the other side, like the backstory. Imagine a movie where we got this exact scenario, but we didn't get any backstory on the occupants of the cabin, and we only got the backstory on the 4 people who show up, the 4 horsemen. Like, it tells a different story, and it shows also their different concerns and interests, because then you'd have a whole story about like what kind of like social conditions and other stuff like led these people to become like the horsemen that like come to this cabin to do that sort of thing. But I also think you're right, Aaron, that like Shyamalan, if he thinks he's onto something, will repeat it and will stick to it and drive home the point in a way that I do think like annoys a lot of people. But he also doesn't want you to like, you know, like in this movie, you're like, what I admire about it is what I sort of said. It's like you take an idea, and he clearly picked up that, you know, he loved this idea that he saw in this novel, and you pursue that idea so fully and like just the idea. And anything that's not about that idea, he's not interested in, and he's just following through on that one specific thing. And so that to me is why, like, you know, I understand that there's like that this movie, I guess I think some people are sort of bothered that like the way it ends, it doesn't explain anything beyond the scenario where essentially that's laid out to us, the viewer, through the characters. But I was really struck by the fact that there's a line, and I forget who says it, but they're like maybe this is how it's always been for families. And that what essentially I think then this movie is about is that you're like, it's essentially like it's kind of like always the end of the world, and you're choosing how to operate against that potential of the end of the world and what sacrifices you will make.
And I think that's why it's a very affirming and hopeful film in that way, actually.
Yeah,
weirdly.
But it sets up even within sort of like people who are like the plausibles and want to set up like a world of me like, okay, well, are you saying that this has happened before? And I would be like, well, yeah, like if you want to take it that way, I'd say like within this story world, Shyamalan's setting up the possibility that this has happened to other families, and they've been confronted with this choice, and they had to make a certain choice in order to continue the world.
I thought of an interesting also comparison between this and Nope. Which
yeah.
I think as the year goes on, liked better than you guys. And I kept thinking about some of the things in the same way that this film allows you to, I think
I'll
about
rewatch
things.
it. Maybe next summer.
But the role also though that like this like obsession with like belief and needing to see something and stuff is an interesting aspect in our society, which no longer you can't believe what you see anymore. I mean, we now have AI generated images and like, you know, stuff like that. So it's like a holding. So what Shyamalan gets at is the sort of what ecstatic faith aspect of like latching onto an experience of something, right? Not necessarily the fidelity of the image or like things like that, but rather an experience, which converts you in a way.
I guess one thing, maybe just like sort of a final point on sort of some of these threads. Like I am sort of intrigued. I do think Shyamalan, even despite what I said of sort of keeping things close, I do think using the news clips today plays a little bit differently, because he actually is inviting in a way that in Signs were in 2002 were not invited to be skeptical of the news footage we're shown.
Right.
But I think now the way this plays in 2022, 2023, like he actually is inviting us to be like, you know, like in the fact that like there was an earlier program and like this is being ongoing, like we're just sort of playing it up now. Like there is that sort of like he's aware of people's skepticism of TV news as sort of a repository of truth, and that sort of builds into the. I think that's another aspect where we have to weigh like how much we like believe. Like we're not totally convinced just because they put it on the
right
TV.
Exactly. And I think that's important though, because otherwise again it would take away the choice that they have to make. Like a choice, if ultimately it's a film about faith, then it does require experiential faith, but it does not like it's not blind faith just because somebody told you something, but it's also cannot be testified by like the evidence of like these things happening. If it would, then it was like, well, as soon as they killed, you know, the Rupert Grint character and things start happening, you'd be like, oh, well, I guess it's happening. We better do it. You know?
Yeah. It's
like
not like the,
it would change the nature of the
decision.
decision. Like, I'm not saying that everybody would do it. Like, there might be people, you know, and Andrew occasionally says, even if it were real, I wouldn't do it. You know?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing as well, but it fits into his character and his emotional journey.
I don't know what's going on here, but where are the keys to the truck you guys came in? I'm taking my family, and we're leaving.
Do you really think that everything that happened today, everything we've seen, do you really think it's all just a coincidence?
Yes. I think it's all coincidence. Some horrible, unexplainable coincidence. Or it has to be a trick. I have to believe that.
You already don't believe that.
So to sort of wrap things up, how do you guys see this as a Shyamalan film in terms of, you know, is this one of his better, one of his worst, mid-level? And then I guess just maybe you want to recap for listeners, like where are you at with sort of Shyamalan? Anders, why don't you go first? I think you're maybe the most.
Because, well, I've seen the fewest, I think, of his films because I didn't catch. You know, I kind of gave up after Lady in the Water, which I think of the ones I've seen is probably my least favorite. To me, even like Split and Glass and this one, I like a lot of stuff about them. I like them more than certain people online. Like I liked Glass and its attack on the plausibles, as I called it. But to me, these newer ones don't feel on the same level as his early 2000s run from 99 through 2004 of like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, and The Village. I think are probably still, even formally, I love the way they look. These last few, they just, because they're smaller scale, they're just inevitably going to look a little bit, you know, slighter a little bit, which is fine. But maybe I would have even liked it more if M. Night Shyamalan did his own television show.
The one I need to revisit, The Village.
My
sense is that everyone started to think that The Village is actually good, if they're into Shyamalan and not sort of like the one that he fell off, but actually sort of fits as like his sort of best ones. And it does have that sort of, it's still operating on like prestige level, and like talk about a movie where, I mean, he was sort of the height of Shyamalan. Like when it was coming out, I was very anticipating it, and but it has great, you know, production values, but also fascinating sort of like social allegory for specifically the early 2000s.
A great cast.
Yeah, William Hurt,
Joaquin Phoenix, Adrian Brody.
So Aaron, I think you've kept up the most with all this stuff.
Yeah, the only Shyamalan films I haven't seen are his first two. So I've seen, so that means that I've seen all of his last 6 or whatever, like his post fall off. I've seen all those except in theaters, except for The Visit I caught up on streaming. But
and do you think like this one, like where
my initial reaction was like, I felt very similar to how I did coming out of Split, where I was just like really satisfied by a B movie. Well made, had a fun time, didn't really think about it that much. The difference with this and Split, where like Split was more of superficial pleasures, where it was just a lot of fun watching James McAvoy go nuts on screen. And I think there's something to be said about when Shyamalan makes a really good casting decision, he kind of lets the actor guide it and then uses the camera to really accentuate like the physicality of that performer. And you get that with McAvoy, and you get that with Bautista here, and you get that with Bruce Willis in Unbreakable. You get that with Haley Joel Osment in Sixth Sense. Like he really like shapes the visual tone to the character that he's kind of the central character. The issue is that when he miscasts, he also does it. So you get a Mark Wahlberg happening where I'm just like, it's just the weird confusion of Mark Wahlberg really like channels throughout that film, where you're not entirely sure what the tone is at any moment because he's not sure.
The bees are dying. The bees.
No, the best moment in that whole movie is the scene where he comes in and that lady's like, "You're gonna kill me in my sleep." He's like, "No, ma'am, I'm not. We're not gonna kill you. I'd swear." And it's like, no, I'm not doing it. And it's like he's trying to be genuine, but he comes across as so like fake.
That's what Mark Wahlberg's like all the time, though.
I know, I love it, but yeah, guys, you heard about the bees?
I remember I watched some of that Wahlberg reality show. He's like that in real life.
I mean, I think Wahlberg's kind of hilarious, but the happening's not good. But I'm not one of those people who's I think it's like pretty clearly his worst of the Shyamalan films, where it's not like a gun for hire thing. Like I think you can easily say Last Airbender is probably worse, but Last Airbender is also it's like very forgettable. Like I haven't thought about it at all. It's just a bad.
I forgot that
movie.
He made it.
After Earth is kind of underrated. It's not good, but it's not bad. It's just kind of like a weird sci-fi action movie.
And like that new Adam Driver film was gonna be like too.
Okay, yeah, that's the first thing I thought about. I was like, oh, they're just, I guess every 10 years you have to make like a really, really boring sci-fi movie with an action star. No, so I'm not like some of the people online who would probably say that Knock at the Cabin is, it's Shyamalan's comeback. It's like, didn't we do this with Split? Didn't we do this with The Visit? Like, haven't we done this already? But now talking about it more, I might actually like Knock at the Cabin more than any of his recent films, partially because of how the themes really are of a piece with Signs, and which I think is his best movie. So who knows? It's the kind of film I'd actually be like happy to rewatch even in the near future and see how it works a second time with all the kind of plot questions out of the way.
Yeah. No, I think it's so short. Like I could easily fit it in. I feel like my wife she wanted to see it, but like I might take that opportunity if it comes up then to sort of rewatch and be like, if I know what's going to happen and I'm not watching it to find out what's going to happen, how does it play that way? I would say like, I think Shyamalan's definitely in sort of like a third stage or phase in his career. And I don't know what the exact point would be. Whether whether it's The Visit.
It's The Visit.
Yeah,
I mean, the B movie phase.
It goes B movie. But I think like I like, out of the ones I've seen of this, Knock at the Cabin might be the best in terms of its like standalone qualities that I've seen. I haven't seen them all. I haven't seen Old. I have a fondness for Split and for Glass, both for McAvoy's crazy performance, and then also just for the fact that I finally got the Unbreakable trilogy, and I was just actually deeply satisfied that he actually made it happen. Maybe not the way he planned it, but he made it happen. Definitely the middle phase is the weakest, and so I guess maybe where I just would leave off is that it's nice to see him settling into sort of a rhythm now, and I hope every year or two he has another of these until he sort of has the next phase. But like I'll keep watching them now, and they're good for what they are, and having that sort of like, I meuld just say like, it's not all the time that like even if people are like, I didn't believe the whole how the premise plays out entirely. I'll just say that frankly, it's more interesting than a lot of the stories I'm told. I like these sort of what if stories.
Mm-hmm. I think you guys talked me up from like maybe a 3-star to 3.5 star.
It's like, do you like the Twilight Zone? If the answer is yes, then we should be happy that M. Night Shyamalan's out there making these movies. Now he's taking the online L's for the rest of us.
I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that. It's good knowing he's out there, the dude, taking her easy for all us sinners.
Before we end off, I'll just say if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, Three Brothers Film, check us out on there. Subscribe. We're posting the clips from podcasts. We're posting full episodes. Aaron has video essays, and we're starting to do our deep dive film reviews audio version. So definitely check us out there as well. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
I bid you farewell.